Time I already began the subject of karma, and I had more or less covered the subject of what good karma is. And I was beginning.
Sir, you're on mute.
Hello? I'm not on mute. Hello?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Somebody said I was on mute. So the last time I explained the subject of karma, and I also explained what is good karma, and I had begun or was about to begin bad karma. So just to recapitulate, Arjuna is in a state of nervous collapse, not because he is afraid of the people who are facing him in battle, but he is afraid of the karmas he will incur as a result of fighting all his elders, his relatives. And he believes that by killing them, he will incur very bad karma. So Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra is defeated before the battle by the philosophy of adharma. And the philosophy of adharma is it frightens you with the idea of karma. Therefore, Krishna in his Bhagavad Gita describes how to transcend karma so that you can become free from karma. This is the subject matter of the Bhagavad Gita. So, Bhagavad Gita is not about karma, it is a karma busting book. It's a book that teaches you how to transcend karma. So we will come to what Bhagavad Gita says about how to bust karma a little later. But what I'm going to tell you now is everything about karma so that you have an idea why it is worth transcending karma altogether. Bad karma is bad karma. Whatever bad things you do, whatever evil things you do, whatever harm you perform, that will come back to you. Don't think that you've got away with it. In some time, I will be telling you about delayed karma. But you think sometimes you've got away with bad karma, but bad karma always comes back and it always manifests again. And it manifests at such a date and time when you least expect it. And then you have the consequences to pay. So, as I said, if you harm somebody's body, that bodily harm will come back to haunt you. If you harm somebody's mind, the same harm will come to your mind. If you harm somebody's intellect, that same harm will come to your intellect. And if you harm someone's ego, then surely that harm will come to your ego as well. That harm is not just to other human beings, but the harm that you do to all other living entities. And all other living entities means including the pain and the suffering that you cause to other animals. If you are in the unfortunate habit of harming other living entities to pleasure your tongue, then do not think that this sin will go unpunished, that this bad karma will not come back to you. People should understand that this bad karma is the commonest bad karma that we are engaged in, and we do not realize what we are doing. When I was teaching in medical college, we had one transfer student from Burma, now Myanmar. And I saw after the class that he opened his dabba and he was eating meat. So I said, I thought you were Buddhist. He said, yes, I am Buddhist. So I said, if you're a Buddhist, how come you're eating meat? Don't you understand that the Buddha wanted you to give up eating all animal flesh? So he says, nobody told me this. I said, there's a Buddhist temple not far from here. Please go there and talk to the priest. So next time he came for the lecture after the class, he was waiting for me. So I said, oh, did you talk to the priest? He said, yes, and he laughed. He said, my priest also eats meat. I said, oh, and what does he say about the karma that is incurred? So he said, as long as somebody else kills the animal, then the bad karma doesn't affect me. At that time, I was working in a hospital where I had the duty of operating on all kinds of criminals. We had a prison ward. And the prisoners, many of them hardened criminals, they were always grateful for whatever the doctors did for them. On more than one occasion, a criminal has caught hold of my hand and told me that, doctor, you have done so much for me. I also want to do something for you. If you ever need anyone to be murdered, please let me know. So I told this to that Buddhist student. I said, you see, I don't have to kill you myself. I have many people who are dying to do that for me. So if I simply point you out and say, yes, kill this guy, and you are killed, even though I do not kill, am I responsible or am I not responsible? So he said, of course, you'll be responsible if you tell one of your criminals to kill criminal patients to kill me. So I said, yes, in the Mahabharata it is written that one who sells the animal, one who buys the animal, one who kills the animal, one who cooks the animal, one who cuts the animal, one who serves the animal, along with the person who eats the animal, all of them are affected by the bad karma that is incurred. So saith the Mahabharata. So therefore, you should be very clear on this issue that you are incurring bad karma every time you are eating a product of violence. Eating a product of violence will bring violence upon you. If it will not bring violence physically upon you, it will bring you violent thoughts, violent words, and of course, the inclination to perform violent deeds. So bad karma means you will get bad karma, which you will suffer in this life itself. You will suffer it in the interval between two lives, which is known as Narak or hell. And when you are born again, as long as that bad karma continues, you will continue to suffer this life after life until it gets finally consumed. Therefore, bear it well. As I said, ignorance is not an excuse. Also, do not imagine that because I am doing good karma and some bad karma I am allowed to perform, because some bad karma will be cancelled by the good karma. So you may be a chartered accountant, or you may be an accountant of some sort, and you want to, balance the uh, liabilities and the assets. But please try to understand that there's no double entry bookkeeping in the law of karma. In the law of karma, you suffer for every single bad karma you perform, and you will enjoy every good karma you perform. So that if you want to understand, if you have 100 bad karmas and you have 50 good karmas, it doesn't mean you have 50 bad karmas in balance. It means you have to suffer for those 100 bad karmas and you have to enjoy for the 50 good karmas that you have performed. To make it even more difficult, you have to understand that sometimes you think you're doing good karma, but actually you'll end up doing bad karma. And sometimes people think you're doing bad karma, but actually it happens that you do good karma. This is the karma, bad karma, good karma paradox. So in the good karma, bad karma paradox, there are many stories in the Mahabharata which describe this. For example, there is the example of a sage who was meditating. And while he was in deep meditation, his meditation was disturbed by a wounded man who was running past him and hiding in a cave which was nearby. Soon after, there came the king's men, the soldiers, the police force, and they asked the sage, "Did you see where that man went?" And of course, we must follow the law. So he said, "In that cave, a man went running." And sure enough, they found the man in that cave, they brought him out, and they killed him. That man was actually an innocent man, and he was being pursued by these soldiers for no rhyme or reason. And it's a case of mistaken identity. And because it was very bad karma to kill an innocent man, that bad karma also became part of the bad karma of the sage who was meditating. He thought he was doing a good deed, but in fact, he landed up getting a bad deed or bad karma. There's also an example of a hunter who was hunting for prey. And when you hunt, the laws of hunting state that you should not kill an animal when it is eating, drinking, or having sex. You should not kill an animal which is physically impaired, either due to lack of sight or due to its being wounded. You only can kill healthy animals. And he was hunting tigers. And when he came there, he saw a blind tiger limping towards the water and going and drinking water. And the hunter shot the tiger. Now you can imagine that he broke all the rules. So he should have committed bad karma. But as soon as he shot the tiger and the tiger died, all the villagers who were around began to rejoice and dance. And the gods themselves beat kettle drums and threw rose petals on the head of the hunter. It's because that tiger was a man eating tiger who had killed many of the villagers. And by killing him, even though he thought he was doing bad karma, actually it turned out that he was doing good karma. So, this is an example of a person who tries to do bad karma and lands up with good karma. And you saw another example of a person who tries to do good karma and lands up to do bad karma. In the Bhagavad, there is a story of King Nriga. And King Nriga has a desire to accumulate a lot of good karma. So he is giving cows in charity to saintly people. And when he is giving these beautiful cows, white, 16 hands high, full udders, often accompanied by their calves, he gives a couple of these cows twice because those cows wander back into his fold. And without realizing he's already given them away, he gives them to another saint. And both saints, although they were saints, they were so disturbed by this that they began fighting amongst themselves. And then the King Nriga went to them and said, "Look, I'm sorry I did this. I will give you a dozen cows in exchange for the mistake I made. I'll give a dozen cows to each of you." But both of them said, "You have caused a disturbance of our mind. And because you have disturbed these are people like us who are saints, for this you have to incur bad karma." At the end of his life, Nriga was approached by Yamaraj, and Yamaraj asked him, would you like to have your good karma first or would you like to have your bad karma first? Being an intelligent man, he said, I'd like to have my bad karma first. And immediately he became a lizard in the bottom of the well. And when he became a lizard in the bottom of the well, he realized that this game of karma is very difficult to perform. Kim karmeti, kim akarmeti, kavayo apya artha mohitaha. What is good karma, what is bad karma is very difficult to understand. Even wise people are bewildered by this. And therefore he turns towards God and he asks God to help him to transcend karma. And eventually he is delivered by the Lord himself. So, have you ever had this experience that you've tried to do good for somebody and somehow it backfired? And the same person for whom you're trying to do good things turns towards you and gets angry and furious and says, why did you do this? Who asked you to try to help me? You've only ruined the situation. So if you ever had this experience, you will immediately understand that doing good karma often lands up in your doing bad karma. And as I told you, good karma and bad karma cannot be cancelled by each other. You have to enjoy every little bit of your good karma and you must suffer everything that is in your bad karma. Further, you must understand that the results that you get of your good karma and bad karma are not necessarily real time. So there is what we call as instant karma. Instant karma is easy to understand. You are feeling thirsty and you have a glass of water. And as soon as you have that glass of water, your thirst is quenched. You're hungry and you eat something, and automatically your hunger is quenched. So this is instant karma. You go into the toughest and roughest part of the neighborhood that you live in, or in Bombay, you go to the most violent and dangerous area of your city. You look at the most violent gunda or criminal that you see there and go and slap him on the face. And immediately he does more than slap you back. That's also instant karma. So you do karma and you see the result of that karma. That is known as instant karma. However, this instant karma is different from delayed karma. And please listen carefully. For if you understand what is delayed karma, you will truly understand karma. If you do not understand delayed karma, you will not understand karma at all. Delayed karma means you perform an action and you forget that you performed the action. And sometime after that, you get the result. For example, if you take two laxative tablets, say two Dulcolax tablets and Bisacodyl tablets, and when you take those tablets, two of them, still you are constipated, nothing comes out. But within 6 hours to 8 hours, then you get the tenesmus, then you get the cramping in the stomach, and then you find that your bowels begin to move very vigorously. So 6 hours there was no action. Your action had no reaction. But after 6 to 8 hours, you had the reaction. This is called delayed karma. Delayed karma means that the action you do has long been forgotten, or a considerable period of time has passed between the time you perform the action and your reaction comes much, much later. For example, in our medical school, there was a boy who sitting in the amphitheater, incidentally the same amphitheater of Munnabai MBBS, he creates a disturbance in the class and he makes such a nuisance of himself that the professor throws him out of the class. So he walks down from the amphitheater, down the steps. And while he is going, he waves at the professor and waves at the girls who are laughing on the benches. So he thought that was it and nothing would follow. But 6 months later, when this boy was appearing for his university examination and he was appearing for his viva voce or oral examination, he came face to face with his examiner. And the same examiner was the professor with whom he had mocked and made fun of 6 months ago. And what happened? Of course, he was not a good student to begin with, but the professor made short shrift of him and he failed that exam. So you perform an action, you forget about the action, but ultimately, when the time is due, at that time, the karma becomes payable. And you have to suffer the consequences of the delayed karma. So you must understand that when we look around in the world, we often see people who are doing evil things. And we wonder, how are they enjoying? How are they prospering? And the answer is, it's delayed karma. I'll give you the example of a person who came to me and he said, that doctor, I can't understand what is happening in this world. You talk about the law of karma, but see what's happening in my life. I was born and my neighbors was born practically a few days apart in the same nursing home in the city, in the same maternity home in the city. And right from infancy, he was a crook and he was a rascal. While I was an innocent do-gooder, helping other people, doing everything possible. From childhood, he was the one who bullied everyone, who stole their snacks and their lunch. And I was the one who opened my lunch box and shared it with other people. When we began our business together, everything he could do to break the law, he did. He cheated, he lied, he concealed taxes, he bribed, he was corrupt. And yet, he only seemed to prosper. On the other hand, he said, I've been good, I've been paying all my taxes, I've been doing good to everyone, I've been looking after my employees. But what is the consequence? My business goes bust. In fact, everything he touches turns to gold and everything I touch becomes ashes. I have been married for so many years and I'm so loyal and faithful to my wife. And this man, although he is married to a very beautiful and wonderful woman, he is most disloyal to her, having affairs with every other woman. In fact, my wife has run away with him. So you tell me, doctor, how can I accept this law of karma? Because I see someone who's doing evil and he seems to prosper, and I am doing good and I seem to suffer. So I explained to him the ancient example of how people store grain in their farms and in the villages. So the grain that they take, they put into a vertical tumbler, a vertical drum. So into a vertical drum, they pour the rice grain from the top. And at the bottom of that vertical drum, there is a tap which if you open, the grain will come out. So I said, suppose you and he are standing side by side. He has a drum in which he has stored grain. or his karmas, and you have a drum in which you have stored grain or your karmas. Half of his drum is already filled with long perfumed basmati rice, and half of your drum is filled with unpolished red, coarse, smelly rice. Now, when you are looking at him, he is pouring into his drum, which is already half full of basmati rice. On the top of that, he is pouring red, unpolished, foul smelling rice, while you are putting into your drum, which is already half full of unpolished, red, foul smelling rice, you are pouring fine, perfumed basmati rice. But when both of you open the taps of your drum, he who is putting foul rice into his drum finds that he gets basmati rice. And when you open your tap of your drum, you get foul, unpolished, red, foul smelling rice. The answer is because half of that drum is already filled with that rice. Similarly, the half of his drum is already filled with beautiful, long-grained, perfumed basmati rice. Ultimately, a time shall come when the halves that were already half filled get exhausted. Then you will begin to get the actual quality of rice that you're putting in. So also you are experiencing now the karmas which you have performed in the past. And while you are performing the karmas in this life, you are getting the results of the karmas of the last life. This is clearly mentioned in the scripture that the good karmas or the bad karmas you perform in this life are actually experienced to the fullest extent in the next life. Because in this life, you already have what is known as your prarabdha. I'll give you a story from the Mahabharata. In the Mahabharata, Dhritarashtra is born blind. And not only is Dhritarashtra born blind, but Dhritarashtra finds that he has 100 sons, and all these 100 sons die in the battle of Kurukshetra. So he's speaking to Krishna and he is telling Krishna, what did I do in order to deserve this? Why did I have to suffer this ignominy, this handicap of being born blind? Why did I have to have 100 sons, a great thing, but then I had to see them all die within my lifetime? What possible evil could I have done in order to suffer this kind of bad karma? So Krishna explains to him and he says that, my dear Dhritarashtra, please understand, when 50 lifetimes ago, you were a hunter and you and your wife were capturing baby swans or cygnets. And in order to capture the baby swans, you threw a flaming net over them. And when you threw a flaming net over them, the parents tried to rescue their children. And in rescuing the children, they were burnt and they became blind. Therefore, Dhritarashtra, you also had to have this same karma repeat itself in your life. So Dhritarashtra tells Arjuna, how unfair is this that I had to experience this in this lifetime? Why couldn't I have suffered it in the same lifetime? Why couldn't I have suffered it in the next lifetime? Why did I have to wait 50 lifetimes in order to experience the loss of my 100 sons? So Krishna tells Dhritarashtra that Dhritarashtra, before you can lose 100 sons, you must have, before you can experience the bad karma of losing 100 sons in your lifetime, you must first have the good karma in order to have those 100 sons. If you don't have 100 sons, how can you lose them? Just to explain to you that if you enter into a business contract and that business contract finally you discover that you have to pay somebody 100 lakhs, 1 crore, but you of course don't have that 1 crore. So when the bailiff comes to your house to say, please pay that 1 crore to so and so, you say, I don't have that money. What do I do? The court may have ruled that I have to pay him 1 crore, but I don't have 1 crore. So what happens? Is that warrant cancelled? Are you free from having to pay him? No. When you make 1 crore again, then that warrant will be served upon you, and then you will have to pay that 1 crore which you owe. Similarly, Krishna explains to Dhritarashtra that before you can lose 100 sons, first you must have enough good karma to have 100 sons. So for 50 lifetimes you remain childless. Yet in each lifetime you accumulated enough good karma to have 2 sons. And then you finally, when you accumulated enough good karma to have 100 sons, then those 100 sons could be in fact destroyed and killed before your own eyes. Of course, people think that you don't require good karma to have children. They think that all you require is a good infertility specialist. So I must share with you this real life story of a friend of mine who had 2 daughters. And although he had 2 daughters, he was very keen that he should have 1 son. So he came to me and said, what should I do? What should I do? I said, you please accept your prarabdha. Please accept your manifest karma. So he said, no, I come from a business family and I have to have a son. It's so important to me. I said, both sexes are equal, especially in this day and age. There's no reason for you to strive and want a son. But he said, no. He went to the best gynecologist. His wife got pregnant. He went to that best gynecologist, and in those days, to determine the sex of the child, you had to do an amniocentesis. And he did an amniocentesis by that best gynecologist. And he found that this child in his wife's womb was in fact a one more daughter. So he told this best gynecologist to abort that child, so that by aborting that child, he would no longer have that additional daughter that he did not want. And sure enough, he had the abortion done. And when that aborted child was dragged out from the womb into the light of day dead, he saw that actually it was a male child. So, in trying to circumvent the law of karma, he actually went ahead and fulfilled the law of karma. So, you must understand that the law of karma is immutable, and the law of karma continues to act. And the law of karma acts not just in one lifetime, but it can continue in future lifetimes. And it can continue in future lifetimes because you're not able to pay that debt, you're not able to pay that karmic debt in this lifetime or the previous lifetime. So your karma is held in abeyance. And when you are able to pay for that bad karma, having performed enough good karma, then that bad karma will act upon you. So the law of karma is not so simple that you do something now and you suffer immediately later. Which brings us to the question that how do you know that there's another life? How do you know there is another life? Indeed, only foolish people talk like this. There was a There was a Charvaka philosopher who said, Yavat jivet sukhat jivet rinam kritva gritam pibet bhasmi bhutasya dehasya punarjanama kuta bhavet. Whatever you do in this life itself, ultimately this body becomes ashes. So you must enjoy, drink ghee, take a loan if you must. Doesn't matter if you have to pay an EMI, take a loan. Because after all, the future life, who knows whether it's there or not. So I would like to illustrate to you the importance of reincarnation. And in reincarnation, you must understand that this is known in parapsychology, which is a very important scientific subject, as metempsychosis. And there are many research scientists who have been working on metempsychosis or reincarnation. And there are people, I'll give you a name and an example, and you can actually look up, buy those books by these scientists, and you can study them so that you may be convinced that reincarnation exists. There's a Professor Ian Stevenson. Professor Ian Stevenson was a professor of parapsychology and the head of the department in the University of Virginia. And he has studied so many cases of alleged reincarnations. And he has published 17 volumes after having examined them, interrogated them, studied them, until there was no other rational explanation except for the fact that they were reincarnated. He came all the way to India to speak to a little girl who continued to speak of her previous life. And nobody took her seriously, but the neighbor who was a journalist had it put in the newspaper, local newspaper. And Professor Ian Stevenson and his team came to this village and they spoke to this girl. They took her to the place that she was talking about where she lived in her previous birth. And having gone there, this little girl, hardly 5 years old, was able to identify the entrance, which was now blocked. Because of Vastu reasons, they had created another door. And she said, no, the door is here. And she had to be explained that it was closed and another door had been opened. She went in, she identified all the relatives. She identified her husband from the previous birth. From a whole bundle of saris, she identified which were the saris that belonged to her in the previous life. When she was brought before her daughter from the previous life, her maternal instincts took over, and she, although she was much, much younger and smaller, she embraced that child as if she was the mother and that grown woman was the child. And Professor Ian Stevenson was forced to conclude that this was a case of genuine metempsychosis or reincarnation. As a matter of fact, because people said that this only is there in India and it is not there anywhere else, he actually published one volume on reincarnations of the Western type, where he studies cases which were in the Western world, where the children say that they have reincarnated. So it's not just in India, although children are discouraged from talking about this in other cultures where reincarnation is not accepted. There are cases of reincarnation reported all over the world. Unfortunately, you have to understand that people do not encourage talk of reincarnation. But eventually, it is such that by the time the child grows up, over a period of time, they forget. You can just take out just need a few grains of rice in order to be able to test it out, whether the rice is cooked or not. So also there are few cases of reincarnation which are well established scientifically as well, but there's no proof that everyone has reincarnated. Yes, if there are any questions, I will take them now.
Thank you, Dr. Nagakatti, and welcome everyone. Good morning. Dr. Nagakatti, during this session, you spoke about instant karma and delayed karma. So I think we're getting a lot of questions on the same lines, that while people do understand, what is instant karma, and you've explained it beautifully, and delayed karma, how does one really keep up faith, when they understand, okay, this is not my time, and I will have to wait for the good fruits to be born of, the things I've done, the good things I've done, maybe in this life or last life. So how, as humans, do we keep up faith when things around us are going wrong?
The question is, how do you keep faith?
How do you keep faith when you understand that it might be a case of delayed karma, and in spite of the fact that nothing good is going on in your life, or you perceive nothing good is going on in your life?
In the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, it is mentioned, Tena vina tranamapi na chalati. Not a blade of grass moves without God's consent. If a blade of grass moves on the left side, it is by God's consent. If it moves on the right side, it moves by God's consent. So the truth is, the whole purpose of this lecture on karma is not to help you to figure out what is bad karma, good karma, how to perform the right karma, and how to avoid the wrong karma, and how to have faith so that you will take comfort that my good karma will come along. It is the purpose of the Bhagavad Gita is to teach you how to become transcendent to karma, so that the laws of karma do not act on you anymore. Yagnartharth karmanonyatra loko yam karma bandhana tadartham karma kaunteya mukta sanga samachara. All actions you do for yourself, they will bind you to karma. All actions you do as a sacrifice to please God, these actions are free from karma. So the whole objective is forget about good and bad karma. You make mistakes in thinking this is good karma and you perform bad karma. Also, you try to do good karma, and unfortunately, even though it is supposed to be good karma, it backfires on you and it turns out to be bad karma. The entire purpose of this session and the purpose of the Bhagavad Gita is to teach you to forget about good and bad karma, but do your dharma, do what is your duty, do what is your right, and do it without aspiring for anything for yourself, without desiring good or bad karma.
Right.
Do everything to please God. Yat karoshi, yad ashnasi, yat juhosi, dadasi, yat tapasyasi, kaunteya tat kurushva madarpana. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer, whatever you give away, whatever charities you perform, whatever austerities you perform, everything Krishna says, do it for me. Shubha ashubha phalair evam mokshasi karma bandhane sannyasa yoga yuktena vimukto mame vaishyasi. By this you will cross over both good karma and bad karma. Shubha ashubha phalair evam, the fruits which are auspicious or inauspicious, the fruits of good karma and bad karma, you will transcend. And in this spirit of renunciation of karma, you will return back to me.
Thank you, Dr. Nagakatti. Another question that we have is that, does someone who gives up all materialistic gains and prays to God, and of course does good karma, attain better karma than the others? So is an undue attachment
We
to the
don't want you to give up your materialistic gains. Dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. We want you to have all of them. We want you to do your dharma. We want you to have your consequent wealth that results from it. We want you to enjoy your legitimate sense pleasures. And then we want you to attain moksha. So we don't want you to give up your material things. Don't worry. Nothing has to be given up. And if anyone is under this false impression, please forget about it. Sannyasas karma yogas cha nihashreyasya karavabhav. Tayostu karma sannyasat karma yogo vishishyate. There are two paths that lead to salvation. One is to abandon the world, and the other is to work in the world in a spirit of devotion and renunciation. And between the two, to work and do your dharma in a spirit of renunciation, that is superior. Sannyasastu mahabaho dukkham aptumo yogata. Yoga yukta munir brahma na chirena adi gacchati. If you abandon the world without having realized God, you will get only sorrow. Dukkham aptumo yogata. But if you work in the world with dedication, devotion, and renunciation, you will attain the supreme without delay.
Thank you, Dr. Nagakatti. Another question that we have is how many types of karma are described in the Gita?
I told you Bhagavad Gita does not describe karma in detail at all. There are maybe few verses which I am covering as I go on. Bhagavad Gita is about transcending karma. It is about going beyond karma. Karma is a philosophy that paralyzed India. It led to so many kings giving up their kingdom out of fear of karma and becoming monks, becoming arihants, becoming munis, becoming sannyasis. And by doing that, the entire populace was put into many, many problems. Society was, in fact, handicapped by the fact that Kshatriyas were giving up their duty and they were abandoning everything because they were so hungry for salvation. So Krishna came to free us from adharma, the philosophies that stress and emphasize karma. They are all adharmic. And Krishna taught us in Bhagavad Gita how to transcend karma. Sarva dharman parityaja mam ekam sharanam vraja. Aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshaishami masucha. Krishna says, abandon all these stupid philosophies that teach you how to do good karma, avoid bad karma, how to do this, how to do that. This is all manipulation of Prakriti, which is not possible. You can't manipulate Prakriti. Mamayvanso jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana manashastendriyani prakriti sthani karshati. You are struggling with your six senses that include the mind because you are an infinitesimal part of myself. You are an ansh of me. That's why you are struggling with Prakriti. And you can't conquer Prakriti. Daivi esagunamayi mama maya duratyaya mam eva ye prapadyante mayam etam tarantite. Very clearly he says that my Prakriti is very difficult to overcome because it is my divine energy. Only when you surrender unto me, you will learn how to transcend Prakriti. So unfortunately, people with lesser understanding of Bhagavad Gita have been teaching all kinds of things, including karma. They've been teaching you that don't be tamasic, don't be rajasic, be sattvic, and all these kind of rubbish. The truth is that Prakriti is controlled by God. And we are not to try to fiddle with Prakriti, not to try to fiddle with karma. We have to learn to surrender unto God, and God will do all those things for us if we do our dharma in a spirit of sacrifice and devotion to Him. Yatah pravrittir bhutanam yena sarvam idam tatam swakarmana abhyarchaya siddhim vindati manava. That simply by performing your God-given duties in a spirit of sacrifice to the all-pervading Lord, each individual attains perfection.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Nagakatti. I think a lot of questions that have come to us are on, when it comes to karma, they are extremely on similar lines. And I think all of them, most of them, you've kind of conquered about good karma, bad karma, why do bad things happen to good people. So I will not pick up the smaller questions because, I want to club all of them. So you've answered
There is
most of
still
them.
a lot that I have to cover. This
Yes.
lecture is going on, and we will go next time. We will go into many other aspects of karma. What is the purpose of the existence of the law of karma? what is what is manifest karma or what is prarabdha? Can we overcome prarabdha? And all these things I will be covering. So next session will also be an extension of the class on karma.
Okay.
But
Great.
at every stage, I want to point out, Bhagavad Gita is not about teaching you how to do good karma and avoid bad karma. That is said by ignorant people who have never read Bhagavad Gita. Totally. Bhagavad Gita is about teaching you how to transcend karma.
Right.
Arjuna on the battlefield was going to kill his gurus, Dronacharya. He was going to kill his grandfather, Bhishma. All these would be considered as very bad karma. But Krishna was going to teach him how to do that karma which had to be done in a spirit of sacrifice and devotion to God so that karma would not touch him. And that is what we need to know in this world.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you so much, Dr. Narkati. I think we're almost out of time. We look forward to the next session, which you say will be continuation of the Karma series, the sermons that you will be continuing. And please write in with your all your questions, even if you think we will be answering them in the next session, and we will take all questions together. And look forward again, Dr. Narkati. Look forward to having you on board next Thursday, which is April 1st at 8 a.m. on Speaking Tree. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great day ahead. Thank you.